Weight of the key. Mr. Elias Vance didn't just teach history. He lived for the 21 souls sitting in the mismatched plastic chairs of room 302. To him, they weren't just a gradebook of names. They were a garden he tended with every ounce of his heart. He knew who was struggling at home, who had finally aced a math test, and who needed an extra word of encouragement before the final bell. Among the 21 was Asher. Asher was Elias's own son, a bright-eyed boy who shared his father's crooked smile. During the middle of a lecture on the Renaissance, Asher raised his hand. "Can I head to the restroom, Dad? I mean, Mr. Vance?" Elias chuckled, tossed him the wooden hall pass, and watched his son slip out into the quiet corridor. 3 minutes later, the air was shattered. A high-pitched rhythmic wail erupted from the school's intercom system, the active intruder alarm. The atmosphere in room 302 shifted from curiosity to cold, paralyzing fear. Elias felt his heart hammer against his ribs like a trapped bird. He knew the protocol. Lock the door, lights off, out of sight. Elias lunged toward the heavy wooden door. Through the small, wire-reinforced glass window, he scanned the hallway. His breath hitched. There, only 20 feet away, was a dark, hooded figure. And there, held firmly in the intruder's grasp, with a cold barrel pressed against his temple, was Asher. Asher's eyes locked onto his father's through the glass. He wasn't screaming. He was trembling, his face a mask of silent terror. The intruder's shadow loomed large over the boy, a silhouette of malice in the bright fluorescent light of the hallway. The man's hand tightened on the weapon, a clear signal. Open the door, or the boy dies. Elias's hand hovered over the deadbolt. If he opened it, he might save his son, but he would expose 21 other children to the darkness outside. If he turned the key, he was signing Asher's death warrant. The agony was a physical weight, crushing the air from his lungs. He looked back at the 21 faces huddling in the corner, trusting him to keep them safe. With a sob that tore through his soul, Elias turned the key. Click. The sound was louder than a gunshot in his ears. He slumped against the door, the cold metal of the handle biting into his back. He heard the muffled sound of a struggle, a final cry, and then a silence so heavy it felt like the world had ended. He had chosen the many over his only son. Hours later, after the sirens faded and the hallways were cleared, the weight of the sacrifice began to settle. The students of room 302 stood in the light of the setting sun, safe and whole. They looked at Mr. Vance, and for the first time, they didn't just see a teacher. They saw a father who had given everything so that they could go home to their own families. It is one thing to hear the gospel, to hear that God so loved the world that he gave his only son. It is another thing entirely to feel the weight of the key. We often treat the sacrifice of Jesus as a distant story, a Sunday school lesson. But in that hallway, the cost of love was revealed in its most brutal, beautiful form. Every breath we take is a gift bought by a father who chose to lock the door against sin and death, knowing it meant the loss of his beloved. When you look at the cross, don't just see a symbol. See the Father's hand on the key. See the Son's silent yes in the hallway. You were worth the sacrifice. You are that deeply loved.
What can wash away my sin? What can make me whole again? Nothing but the precious blood of Jesus. For my part in this I see, for my cleansing this my plea. Nothing but the precious blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the flow that washes white as snow. No other fountain I know. nothing good that I have done, nothing but the precious blood of Jesus. This is all my hope and peace. This is all my righteousness, and nothing but the precious blood of Jesus. Jesus. Oh, precious is the flow that washes white as snow. No other found I know, only the blood of Jesus. And oh, through Him I'll overcome. By this I'll reach my home. No other found I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Lamb of God, who hung upon the tree, His blood has set us free. Righteous One, the shelter for the poor, heaven's open door. We sing glory, glory, hallelujah. This blood, it will never lose its power. No, it will never lose its power. That washes white as snow. No other found I know, only the blood of Jesus. Oh, I'll overcome. I'll reach my home. I know nothing but the blood of Jesus. No other found I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus. No other found I know. What can wash away my sin? Nothing but the blood of